Hey everyone, welcome to this weekly Sidereal Astrology forecast for the week of July 14th to the 20th of 2025. Alright, so this week we are coming off of the full moon from mid last week, which means that this is a great week for implementing any new insights, perspectives, or quite literally changes that perhaps you've wanted to implement in your life since about mid last week. This will be particularly important once we get to about Thursday, which will be the third quarter moon, which is really the action phase between that full moon and what will be the new moon next week. And so a good time to challenge ourselves, take those actions, really implement, again, any of these new perspectives or changes that perhaps have been in development. Now, Mercury is going retrograde this week, Thursday, Friday. As we do approach Thursday, the energies are slowing down with Mercury, and he's going to begin his 3-week retrograde process. So it's a really good week to be very flexible, be adaptive, and allow for a reworking and reconsideration with things. Although it's, again, great to implement with a lot of that flexibility, adaptability that we learned during the retrograde, and again, a willingness to go back and approach things differently, especially things that maybe have been going on the past 3 weeks. So past 3 weeks, take those things, good time for that maintenance, redoing, and reworking. With this, it's Mercury getting very close to Leo, right on the cusp there between Leo and Cancer. So giving a little bit of a peek into Leo, but I think the bulk of this is going to be around Cancer, which is that more protective and caring energy, which is where we do have the sun shifting into here the second half of the week around Saturday here. So a little bit more of this viewing life through the lens of what can be cared for, what can be protected, and creating a safe and secure environment for ourselves and others. That's going to be the main theme here for the next new moon, as we will start that new lunar cycle there. But the sun shifting into here starts to give more of that focus there. And again, Mercury retrograde coming back into here, still being a bit adaptive and thinking and reflecting on the things that are important to us emotionally, personally, and intrinsically in our life. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at all of this here in more detail when we return. Alrighty, so here is the sky for this week. We're going to look at this for each day of the week, starting first with Monday, July 14th. And as you can see here, we are using the visible sky on this channel, which is very different from mainstream astrology. You won't see this in mainstream because unfortunately they don't use the visible sky, and so the signs are very different. For example, you might already be expecting the sun to already be in Cancer, but if you look at the visible sky, you will see it there in Gemini. All right, so let's do a little bit of a recap here since we do have some of these sign changes with the sun and Mercury this week. So we've got still the sun coming into the week in Gemini. It's still a great lunar cycle really until we finish it up next week around Gemini, around learning, curiosity, being interested, flexible, developing communication. And again, all these things are going through a reworking since the ruler of that Mercury is going to be going retrograde. So allowing for that slowing down nonetheless, but still great to be being, again, curious, interested, learning, willing to exchange, communicate, maybe socialize a little bit. These are all things that are still the main theme, still great to be focused on, but with that adaptability and flexibility that, of course, the Mercury retrograde is helping us do. So this is a Mercury who's been in Cancer and who's likely going to be playing that main role there during the retrograde. So again, as we said, through the realm of the emotional, through the realm of the personal, through the realm of the intrinsic values of life. And so in this way, as we've probably already noticed, our minds are a little bit more reflective in the sense of maybe who and what's important to us emotionally, personally, intrinsically. It's been a good time to have a bit of a more protective and caring and nurturing frame of mind, and also communication as well. So now, as we'll see with Mercury retrograde, good time to kind of go back over that stuff and reapproach those things a little bit differently now for the next few weeks. But that's where the placements are coming into the week. We still have Venus well set in Taurus, and so it's great to be connecting to life and other people in a very grounded and resourceful way. Taurus, the bull, is all about taking things one step at a time, stopping to smell the roses, and being very grounded in that sense. So great to be cultivating a little bit of that stable, resourceful energy of Taurus. In the meanwhile, Mars is finishing up Leo over the next couple weeks, and this is going to be really good here for that self-expression, as it already has been really good for self-expression, in the sense that it's great to be direct, more assertive, and more independent when it comes to matters of the heart, and when it comes to our joys in life and the things that bring us joy, and of course that self-expression as well. So great to be motivated, putting energy into those really heart-centered things, fun things, comedic things, playful things that Leo is all about. Okay, so that is the energy there, again staggered between these very personal constellations, Taurus through Leo, with the main theme I would say around both Gemini and Cancer. Gemini is more of the mind, Cancer is more of the emotion. And so we actually do have, I would say, a connection going on here, which is always really good. These are the two constellations that form the foundation of the chart, the very bottom of the chart. And you have to have a good perspective on life, a good mental framework, and at the same time, of course, having good security emotionally and personally, and even with things like family or your home. So security, so emotions, and also security of the mind, understanding, knowledge, communication. These form the framework of really the foundation of life as we see it through the astrology. So it's nice to see that there's a lot going on in both of these departments. I think they are both balancing themselves out. And again, one's kind of working with the other here. So, having the mental and the emotional going on is great. Now, the week, coming into the week, we've got that Mercury getting, like I said, quite close to the Leo. Some of you might count this in Leo, but again, since we're using the actual sky, we are using a more blending energy. We want to treat anything next to a sign as within 3 degrees. If it is within 3 degrees, we want to treat it as a blend. We want to treat it as a merge. So there's a little bit of Leo going on. So maybe there's a little bit of dipping in terms of, hey, and this is a sneak peek into about a month and a half from now, after the retrograde, once we get to that Mercury and Leo, but a little bit of a peek into, a little bit of that expressiveness with our communication, a little bit of that thinking about what gives us joy in life. But I think the main theme here, like I said, will be around that protective Cancer. But anyways, here, the moon will be in Aquarius on Monday. And this is going to be a great day on Monday for a little bit of the more collective energies, let's say. Aquarius is all about accessing our more individuality, and as a result of that individuality, probably wanting to contribute to something greater than ourselves. So a great day on Monday to think outside the box, think about how we can be a part of things greater, things that, again, give us that sense of vision and contribution, and perhaps if it's social, doesn't have to be, but if it is, a bit of collaboration. And so it makes it a good time for maybe community, friends, network circles. But all in all, it's all about accessing that individuality, because it is in that individuality that we're able to contribute, right? We all have a very unique role to play in this collective dance, if you will. And so accessing that true self. So it's also good to still be very individualistic, a little bit, again, unorthodox, and a little bit challenging the existing status quo in order to induce this change of Aquarius. So likely some themes around that sort of energy, probably also early Tuesday as well. But when we do get to Tuesday and really all the way up until Friday, so Tuesday through Thursday, we'll have the moon in Pisces. Okay, and so Pisces is definitely more on the watery side of things. It's definitely more on the emotional, but here in the deeper emotional. Pisces, just like Neptune, rules the spiritual world, you could say, okay? The unconscious mind, what's important to us on a soul level in life, right? And perhaps having a little bit more space or peace or flow in our lives. So it's really good to incorporate that. But as you can see, it's a little more of an action phase of the cycle. So when we're talking about this kind of spirituality and soul stuff, as you can see, it's going to lean more towards actually implementing and actually acting on it. So while there might very likely be a lot of things going on for the month here, being in the third quarter moon, and a lot of things being manifested, in that process, connecting to that presence, connecting to that space, connecting to that intuition, or that soul in that process. And so this is going to help us calibrate a lot of what has been that Gemini energy. So once we get to Thursday, we'll enter into that third quarter moon. The sun and moon will square each other. And this is where we want to integrate two very different energies, right? Two very different energies. We've got Gemini, which is, again, more mental. And then we've got Pisces, which is more spiritual. But both of these, anytime we have a square, we're dealing with what's called the same modality. And so the modality here is mutable, and mutable is all about more flexibility. And so both of these signs are teaching us or helping us integrate a more flexible side of ourselves. So in this case, Gemini's flexibility is being willing to learn, being curious, being interested, being adaptive. We've talked a lot about that already with the sun in Gemini. That's been the main theme of the lunar month. But now, middle part of the week, Thursday, well, later, middle to later, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, how can we integrate that more practical flexibility with the more spiritual? In other words, how can we still be, yes, mental, curious, interested, communicating, but in a way that's, again, willing to go with the flow, willing to loosen the reins a little bit, have a little bit more space between things, maybe connect to God or the universe or source, whatever your philosophy is on that, to connect to something greater, a greater source, a greater power, and relinquish that control a little bit, be a little bit more malleable with the flows of life, and again, feeling more and intuiting more and connecting with our soul more can all help us, guide us in the process. So that's the kind of flexibility that I think is great to integrate between these two still very different constellations of the spiritual and the mental, right? The mind and the soul, but of course equally important. So that's going to be manifesting Thursday, manifesting a lot of what likely shifted a week ago during last week's full moon will start to come to materialization. Again, good for that action and then implementation. And this is the time that Mercury starts to go retrograde. It's Thursday and Friday. And again, right on the cusp between Cancer and Leo. So pausing, especially Thursday and Friday, with things that are mental, that are communicative, giving a little bit of space there. But most importantly, I think just being willing over the next few weeks to approach things a little bit differently. Again, I'll say this because it's very important, and it's something that gets very misconstrued in mainstream astrology, is that, it's not that we want to avoid things during Mercury retrogrades. We actually want to do the opposite. We want to get as involved as possible. It's just that by getting involved, we need to make sure that we have a plan A, B, C, and D. We need to be adaptive in the process. And the reason we want to get involved is because we learn so much, we can change so much, we can grow so much, and we can also, sort of do that maintenance and change things and edit things that normally we wouldn't during the direct. So great next few weeks to experiment, explore, try different things. It's just good, again, to be flexible in the process. Yes, it's not the best time to be narrow-minded and say, this is what I'm doing and going full on into that. Usually Mercury retrograde is going to have us reconsider and perhaps approach that differently. So we need to be willing to do that. And so as long as we are flexible and willing to go back and do that maintenance and learn and approach things differently, then great. It's going to be a great Mercury retrograde, I think. It's going to be very much, again, in that Cancer energy, really helping us connect more to, again, who and what's important to us personally in life. And even, personally, like connecting to our bodies a little bit more, connecting to our past a little bit more, caring and nurturing for ourselves. Of course, this can place themes on home, family, and personal relationships as well. Although the signs, and of course it being more collectively, generally is about getting into that Cancer, the crab energy, that protecting energy, that shell, but at the same time connecting, to the soft things in life. But in order to connect those soft things in life, those intrinsic things in life, yes, we need that hard shell. And so that's the protective quality. That's perhaps the boundaries that Cancer can teach us. That's, choosing who and what is important to us and having that clear, as clear as we can, or at least being willing to figure that out during the retrograde process. Okay, so a lot going on there with Cancer, especially because the sun is going to be shifting into there at that same time. So the whole weekend here, the sun will be closer to Cancer. That's going to be adding to that protective theme that, again, will be highlighted as part of the next lunar month that starts next week. Over the weekend, we have some Aries energy with the moon in Aries, Aries Friday, Saturday. So it could be a good couple days for some assertive energy, some proactive energy, some initiating sort of energy here. Great to have some of that fire. Even though things are going to slowly start to close out, we'll still be in quite the active phase of the cycle, being still in that third quarter moon. Now, then the week sort of completes here on Sunday with the moon in Taurus, and that'll set the stage for early next week, which is going to add to that what we were saying earlier with Venus, a little bit of that taking things a bit slowly and steadily. So Sunday could be a good day here for a little bit of one step at a time, a little bit of groundedness, a little bit of cultivating our inner resources, self-worth, self-value, and the external as well, nature, aesthetics, design, beauty, sensual things, anything that grounds us on that department. Okay, so that's the main theme of the week. We do have some minor aspects, but that's the main theme going on there. We could say maybe Saturday, if there's anything you want to do to challenge yourself with some healing. The sun will be squaring Chiron, but that's definitely minor in the grand theme of things. Okay, so that is the week in a nutshell. To summarize all of this, essentially, we've got a week of really action of implementing the full moon insights or shifts from last week, and the actual implementation and manifestation and action of that will be likely Thursday, Friday. But because Mercury is slowing down this week and going retrograde at that same time, we want to be very flexible in the process. And even starting off on Monday, things on the day-to-day level, things on the communicative level, the interactive level with which Mercury rules, begin to slow down. And so we want to, even early in the week, start to allow for that to slow down. Maybe it's the routines, maybe it's our work. Start to get ready for approaching things a little bit differently in those departments. Okay, and and then those are really the main themes this week. And just again, starting to close out the lunar cycle and having a new beginning here next week. All right, so everyone have a fantastic week. We're not going to be having the live stream here this week, unfortunately. So this week, no live stream, but I'll definitely see you next week for the next weekly video. And of course, we'll be back to the live streams there. All right, but have a great week, everyone. Thank you again for all of your support, and I'll see you all next time for the next astrology forecast. Take care.